we started this band for the fans and the friends. I'm not going to let the industry side of me really get to me and really burn me out.
Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in the great Chad of Hemlock. How are you doing, man?
Awesome. How are you guys today?
Really
Other than
well.
the chaos, I mean, feeling good. Everything's good. Work
That's
sucks, but life is good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a mixed bag. It doesn't always suck. Getting to talk to people like you rules. And it's usually my question. Considering, just the time we are in the world, 1 year into this madness, and you live in Vegas, which was shut down for quite a while. Feels like it's reopening. I hope you're well. I hope your bandmates are well.
Yeah.
Family, friends,
Yeah.
loved ones.
I've got no real complaints except for slight boredom, just because we're not able to tour, but healthier than ever, feeling good, ready to rock as soon as we can. But it's got to make sense financially, because to get all of us live in different states right now. So to get everybody together and to do rehearsals. So we haven't done, normally we're the guys that do 200 shows a year, something ridiculous. And we're going on a year and a half of no shows. It's just heart-wrenching and weird. But it's also a small problem in the world for what else the big problems are, So I'm not hating on it, but I definitely miss the tour life and the stage and just seeing our friends. And, we've toured so much over and over and over again that we don't have fans. We have friends everywhere. So I miss my friends, we know them all by name and just going everywhere. And you see people, I remember you with the Iron Maiden shirt on from last year, or whatever. It's just crazy to not be on the road, because we started Hemlock when I was 15 years old. I'm 43 years young right now, and I still love doing it every day. Still love doing it. So this is the only reason why, even I had to have back surgery like 5 or 6 years ago. I ruptured an L4, L5. I used to be really overweight and didn't take care of myself. Started losing the weight, but my bulge disc decided to not cooperate, and it finally ruptured. And we were down for 4.5 months. And then we were back on stage again. I just wore my back brace underneath my shirt, and we would go up and we would rock. And they said, no jumping until Halloween. So right as soon as our Halloween show was, jumping around, headbanging, thrashing, but 4.5 months is the longest we've ever gone without doing a show. And now here we are a year and a half in, and it just seems, it's like a really weird episode of The Twilight Zone, and not even a good episode. It's one of the boring, weird episodes,
Right. It's like one of those, it's been bizarre. And again, hats off to you, and my heart goes out to you and everybody in our community, because realistically, like I said right before we began recording this, it's a whole ecosystem of people who do this for the love, and they hustle. And it's the only way to make a living. I don't want to get like overly weird and morbid just to start this, what I expect to be a fun interview, but I'm going to observe something I haven't actually really talked about. There's a lot of people, they live on the road. They didn't have a house. They didn't have a home address. They live with a girlfriend, family, whatever, touring, just whoever it is, band people, merch people, dust drivers, shirt makers, merch makers, all kinds, screen printers, everybody, right? There's people out there. Like, what do they do with no touring and no even local shows? So like, I worry, because like, if your body is used to, like, I'm used to this lifestyle, maybe you have sleep apnea, maybe you're used to like, 12 noon to 3 a.m, and that's your schedule.
You've obviously been on the road, and the whole get up,
Right.
It's weird, because when we started out as kids, we would always do the weekend warrior thing, and we'd go up to Tahoe, or we'd go to LA. And then you're like, oh, cool, we can add in Reno next time, and we can add in San Francisco next time. So you wind up doing 4 or 5 days. But when you're 17 years old, 18 years old, you got to come back home and still work during the week and pay your we didn't have cell phones back then. This is also pre-internet, when you had to actually take paper maps with you and stuff,
Right.
And you had to come back because you still had car insurance and stuff. But then in 1996, we tried doing our first 2-month tour. And it was weird, because we were like, well, you got to figure out, can I take a leave of absence? Can I put my car insurance on pause? Am I going to have a place to stay when I come home? I mean, luckily, when we were 16, 17 years old, a lot of us still lived at home or had somewhere that we knew we could come back to. But the more we toured, we would start being gone for months at a time. And then the older you get, so for a while there, it was where guys in the band would be, living with their girlfriends or whatever. And then you come home and hope everything's still good. But then you usually come home pretty close to broke, especially back then, because you're paying for your apartment or your house for 2 months to virtually sit empty if you had your own overhead. So we finally just came to the conclusion after years that it was easier to stay on the road. So there was a time where we toured for 8 months straight because it was easier. We had 2 weeks off in the middle that we stayed at a cabin in Michigan to write some new material. One of our guitar players' grandparents lived up there, but it was just easier to tour. So I'd be working on the next, and that's the other thing also with Hemlock. I don't know if you know, but we have never really had a real manager. We've never had a real bus driver. We've never had a booking agent. We had a little bit of love here and there from, it was the agency group back in the day when Andrew Goodfriend and Dave Kirby used to book. So they would put us on a string of dates with Chimera or a string of dates with Hatebreed. And we do like 3 or 4 weeks with those guys, but we'd wind up on the East Coast because that's where they're from. It'd either start or end usually out that way. So I would book us another week or two to come back to Vegas. So I started really getting involved with the bookings and doing all of it. Always have been hand on. So I am the bus driver. I am the booking agent. I am the t-shirt designer, the merch. My wife helps me with as much as she can and helping me keep my heads on straight because I don't know how to do the internet stuff as good. So she usually is the one to do all the Facebook and the web page hosting and all that stuff.
Make sure you're good.
Whoops.
There.
I lost my picture with you.
Yep, I see you. I hope you see me. All right. Now we lost the sound. I think you're muted, my brother.
Let's see.
There we go. Yes. All right.
Back on. Can you hear
You're
me?
Back on. No worries. No worries.
That was pretty convenient timing. I was just getting done saying with how bad I am with computers.
Again, none of us, I feel like we're all Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker from the Muppets, to make another deep cut television reference. We're all like me. I don't know what to do. I barely know what I'm doing. I have help, luckily, but like realistically, I feel I had just learned how to like take all this gear to a show and record myself alone right when this all happened. My last in-person interview was Joe Grind of Toxic Holocaust at St. Vitus Bar in Brooklyn. And yeah, what a mess, man. It's been a wreck. But anyway,
we haven't been out to the East Coast in so long that we need to get our asses out there. We got offered a bunch of tours back in the day where we toured with OTEP and Sworn Enemy and E-Town Concrete, and of course we'd go all around and awesome shows. We played at the Paradise Rock Club out there in Boston, and then we even met up with another band called Halo Burn, I think, and we played up in Chelmsford, just north of Boston, if I remember right. And I love it out there. I mean, we were talking earlier with you that the Worcester Mass show at the New England Hardcore Festival when we were on tour with Ministry in Meshuggah. So we did that tour and it was amazing. And then we got offered from Jägermeister to do the Slayer and Hatebreed tour with Arch Enemy. And we played all out on Jägermeister asked, and they said, we're going to split up the opening slot for the Jaeger band between 3 or 4 bands. So which area do you want to go? I said, as far away from Vegas as possible, because we need to work more. We've been playing here so many times. So they sent us out to the East Coast and we were playing from Kansas City, St. Louis. Then we went up into, we played up in St. Paul, Minnesota, but then we went all the way out and played over at the Electric Theater in Philly. Is that right? The Electric Factory. That's what it was. The Electric Factory.
Might not be there anymore.
Yeah, the Electric Factory was awesome. And I remember the drummer from, what's his name? Chris from Blood Simple was working the back door. I was like, no way, what's up? And he used to be in Downset, and we had played with Downset years and years before. And just the whole connection of music out there. And that we were on the road with Slayer and Hatebreed was amazing. We were supposed to play at the Roseland, the one in New York City, downtown.
Yep.
We were supposed to play there with Slayer, but because we didn't have a record deal, the tour manager kicked us off that show, but they offered us the Electric Factory show instead because it was just a weird thing because they didn't think an unsigned band should be opening for Slayer. But I'm like, but we've already got like 17 years into it or whatever. I mean, we've toured with Ministry and Meshuggah and Hatebreed and Obituary and all these bands, but because it was Slayer, the tour manager and the guys in Slayer were friends with ours. We've been to Kerry King's house, listening to Slayer albums in his kitchen. They were cool with it, but the tour manager just had some kind of ego, I guess, where they needed somebody that was signed. So they got Dry Kill Logic to take our spot. And then they offered us the Philly show instead, but the Philly show was off the hook. It was amazing. So I was glad we got that show anyways, but worked our way down the East Coast. And I mean, I miss it. We've been at, and then we did another tour out there where we went with Mobile Death Camp. I'm not sure if you're familiar with
Yeah, of
Todd.
course.
Okay, those guys are awesome friends of ours, and we played all out there. And I think we played in Springfield, Mass. And I don't know. It's been a long time since we've been out that way, but we need to get back out there because I miss New York. I miss Connecticut. We played up in Maine even on that tour on one show, and it's cool because I get to put all the little pins in my map of all the places we've been and played. And now my map is just full of pins everywhere for all of Europe and all of America and even over Japan. If I'm like a little kid, I start talking about traveling, I get all amped up and ready to rock again.
Right on, man. That's some great stories there, and yeah, you definitely people distinctly remember that Slayer tour because first of all, it was packed. I mean, that's an incredible
Yeah.
bill. Hatebreed was just becoming big. Arch Enemy was well established. Slayer, and you guys. And I know a lot of people that saw that tour and loved you guys and became fans
Yeah.
because of that tour.
Sweet.
And the Meshuggah tour, Ministry especially is such a and Meshuggah are such legendary names. So you guys have done
Yeah.
your thing for a very long time, but we don't have to just talk about memory lane. We have today, man, because you have two killer new albums out, man, two killer albums. And I mean, to put out one album right now, I've said, like, there are a lot of bands that are just like, it's not viable for us to put a record out right now. We can't, for whatever reason. And anybody who is putting anyone who can or feels like, oh, I can't make money if I put this record out, whatever, that's cool. I respect that. But I love that you not only, like, we're going to double down. We're going to put out 2 records. We don't care.
Yeah. We wound up with so much unexpected free time because I actually had booked us over in Europe. It was our first self-booked European tour because we've been over there 5 times before, but we always would do tour swaps. Like we went over to Europe twice with Propane, which is one of my favorite bands and some of our dear friends. I love it. And we would go over and we would get to play for their crowd. So it kind of got our little pinky toe in the door in Europe where we're playing in Germany in front of a packed house or Budapest, or wherever, because Propane's worked that European market so much over there. But because we never had a label, we actually had to save up enough money from our American tours to pay for our own flights and to pay for our own luggage and to get our asses over there to go self-fund our own European tour. So we had to save up like 15 grand, which is no easy feat for a bunch of dudes, metalheads that still have bills at home, but we did it. And I think 2007 was our first time over in Europe. And it just was a whole nother eye-opening experience to where I was like, there's metalheads all around the world. This is amazing. So then we got to go to Japan and we did 2 weeks over there in 2008, I believe. And then back to Europe in 2012 with Propane again. And then we did a tour where we brought the band Ectomorph from Hungary. We brought them to the States and I booked us 2 months of shows. There was like 84 shows in 2 months, just crammed in crazy, whatever, 2.5 months. They said it was the longest tour they ever did. I said, if you're going to come from Hungary, we're going to grind. So we fabricated our tour bus that we have and built a couple extra bunk beds in there because we have an old school bus that we converted. It's like a tour tank. And the guys from Ectomorph rode with us and we swapped a tour and then we went to Europe. And then over in Europe, they have those huge double-decker buses and they have all the bands chip in. And there was 4 bands, 28 bunk beds upstairs. And then the lounge is downstairs. It comes with the driver. So we got to do a huge tour with Ectomorph over in Europe. And then we went back again the next year for 3 weeks that I had booked, but it was just some club shows here and there. And then we went again where we went with Head PE and did a few pickup dates with Propane again and went for 2.5 months all through England and Germany and everywhere. So then for 2020, I'm like, man, we got enough connections. I can book us a full European tour on our own where we're actually getting guarantees and doing good. We can maybe not come home broke, this will be great. So I booked us 48 shows, all headliner shows at all the clubs that we had collected all the information. And I was so proud. I was like, man, I finally booked our full headlining US tour on our own. And of course, we weren't able to go because it started in April of 2020 and all the shutdowns. And we had just also saved up enough money and bought all of our flights. So we spent like 3 or 4 grand for our one-way flights to get there because we weren't sure of the tail end dates yet. And then a week later, they announced all the travel bans and lockdowns. And I'm like, well, shit. All right. I guess we got a bunch of free time that we didn't think about. So here we go. So we just started grinding and writing, came up with 22 songs. Actually, we came with 20 songs. And we started thinking about whittling it down and narrowing it down to just do like a 12-song album or 11-song album. As I was listening, I'm like, these songs are good songs. Why not? There's no rules. There's no regulations. Let's just put out 2 albums. So we wrote 2 more songs so we could have 22 and do 11 on each. Came out with 2 albums. And personally, I think it's probably some of our best material because we had no time restraints. We weren't in a studio where the producer was like, oh, you got to do a radio hit or a hook, or you got to do this or that. Faith No More was always one of my favorite bands when I was a kid. So if you want to put a in the background or or whatever, I mean, it's just weird, but it's funny. And I didn't have anybody holding us back from what we wanted to do. I have a part on our song Wannabe where I laugh like a little kids in the background just because I thought it was weird and funny. You know, I wanted to give each song their own personality. But we spent 6 months recording since all the studios were shut down. We did a new version of recording because usually we'll do pre-production and go to Hollywood and then like get somebody to produce. We've had Mikey Doling do a few albums with us from Soulfly and from Snot, and go to Hollywood and just crank out an album in 2 weeks, just do all the tracks and then send it off. But this way we were like, all right, I guess I need to learn how to track my own bass guitar at home and then email the files in. And so it took forever, but we had no time restraints. So we just hammered at it and came up with 22 songs. They've all got their own kind of personality and hooks and weird quirks, but I love it. I mean, I'm really proud of the new material and I'm glad that you like it too.
Yeah, man, it's super heavy. I love both records. I was going to ask you if you had a person, like, how do they sit for you now that they're both done? They were obviously written over different periods of time, and you did not intend originally to put them out together. But now that you have them, and they do kind of bookend very nicely, they're super heavy. Not one is better than the other. They're pretty damn equally great, both of them for me.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries, brother. How do they feel for you? Do you feel like you have one you like more, or would you like to play some of the tracks off of Carmageddon more than the other one?
No, well, we haven't been able to test any of them out live, and that's always a tried and true for us because we're always a live band to where, you know, you could tell if the crowd gets extra amped up on a certain song. But when I listen to old Metallica and you hear it come on, you have to turn it up no matter what. Like, it's just so good, and you have to turn it up. And I kind of feel that way about the new Hemlock stuff as the songs come on, and not just because it's our own stuff, but I'm like, and I don't also want to compare us to Metallica because Metallica is a whole nother level, but I'm just saying that excitement where you hear a song and you can't get it loud enough, so you turn it up, you know, then you turn it up a little bit more. And sometimes I'll look and I'll have the volume just maxed out. I'm like, man, these are actually good songs, and I'm so excited about being able to play them live. I'm just counting down the days to when we can finally, you know, get out and headbang and mosh and stage dive again, because there's no sense in trying to even social distance at a metal show. I'm used to people sweating and bleeding and, you know, vomiting in the corner. I mean, we had a show years and years ago where I looked, and it was an old bingo hall in Vegas years ago, and we had like 800 kids show up, big old stage, and I look over in the corner and I saw this girl riding this guy back in the back, and I was like, oh my, only at a metal show. This is so crazy. People are moshing and puking and banging, and I don't know. I mean, it just, I love the energy that you can get from the heavy crowds, and just the, you know, the feedback you get from the diehards. So it's definitely missed, and we're excited and looking forward to it for sure.
Right on. What was the what's the venue over on Fremont Street where they used to have metal and rock shows? It's like in a big complex over there before Brooklyn Bowl.
There's another, well, the old theater that's a little bit off the strip is the Huntridge Theater. That's where it was our stomping ground.
That was probably, yeah, I've been there once. I think I saw OTEP there like 10 plus years ago, which is crazy.
It might have been, were we playing with them then or no? Because I think we toured with them in 2003 or 2002, and we brought later. OTEP. Okay.
I think it was more like their second or third record, but
yeah,
I remember when you guys opened for OTEP because it was OTEP's first big national tour.
Yeah. So, Sworn Enemy and P-Town Concrete. I think Diecast might have been on some of the dates too, which was rad.
Yeah, there was some great bills back then, man. Personally, for me, of the 2 records, if I had to pick one song that I just personally love, is Integrity. You've always been kind of a spicy take guy, and I love that you just kind of drop bombs on the whole record industry as a DIY person and DIY band leader still after 25, almost 30 years. You are not afraid to mince words. You are not mincing words. You are not You were like, yo, this is how it is. Pay for play is still a thing. I being on the journalism side, and you can feel free to weigh in on this. There's definitely some unethical practices going on
Oh
our
yeah.
side that I don't love and I don't do, but I know other sites that do. And even when bands approach me or managers approach me, they're like, hey, if we bought ads, what kind of glowing review can you give us? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't do that. If you want to buy advertising, I'd love to take your advertising dollars because
Yeah.
we have a pretty good site, but like I could use money, but to help run it, but like I'm not going to guarantee you a
Yeah.
10 out of
Yeah.
10 review because you bought ads. I would love to do an interview with anybody, as I will talk to anyone, but I love that you just very like this song. There's no holds bar. The whole record is kind of, both records are
I
kind of like
appreciate it.
this, but
I
that
like to
song,
talk shit in my own funny kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of way, and I don't like to get on there and just start bashing. And I don't ever like to necessarily call out names, because I like being really positive. But there's some brutal truth to it for sure. To where, even out in LA, some of these bands that open for us, they'll have to pay $400, $500 just to open, and it has nothing to do with us. It has to do with ticket sales. We don't see that money, and I always feel bad. So usually what I'll do is I'll swap information with these young bands, and then I'll try to get them a show in a different city or whatever, because Hollywood is just so oversaturated and just so inflated with stuff that these guys are excited to open for anybody with even half of a name, that at the Whiskey a Go-Go or at the Roxy or wherever, the Troubadour. And I feel bad. So I'm like, well, hey, if you're going to do all that, let me try and get you a paying gig opening for us over in Anaheim or maybe even up in Vegas or something, and we always try to help out. And that's why we become friends with so many people, is because we're still humble and down to earth. Even after 28 years, we'll go out and hand out flyers. We don't go hide out in the green room or go hide out in the bus. We go hang out, we take pictures, and we give hugs and high fives and watch other bands. And usually I'm also acting stage manager most of the time, because I hate when shit starts running late. And I'm like, because we're the first ones here and I'm the bus driver, so I stayed up till 7 a.m. driving, and then my wife drove the other 3 hours so we could get here in time. And then we load in our own gear. We don't have any roadies. And we set it all up. And I'm like, if shit starts running late, then that means I have to stay up later because I have to drive to the next city. So I try to keep things on a tight schedule, but I do it in a way to where I'm not just barking orders or yelling at people or cutting people's set short. I always talk to the bands ahead of time. I'm like, hey, this is the slot, we're going to help, we're going to do this. And I mean, I'm doing the lead vocals in the headlining band, but usually I'll go out there on stage between the first band, the third band, and start grabbing drums and helping sling gear and handing it off, because I hate when a band finishes their set and then they just kind of wander off stage. I'm like, dude, there's still 4 more bands, I hate long changeovers too. I'm like, the audience paid to see music. They don't want to watch a 45-minute changeover. You could squeeze another band in there. So, I mean, I'll be hustling cabs and people are like, well, shit, if Chad's going to do it, then I'll help. And usually it turns into a whole kind of camaraderie, group thing, to where they're like, oh, well, all right, well, cool. I'll help grab the side of that drum rack. We'll lift it off the front of the stage. We'll get the next one up. And then the next year when we go back to that town, I'll see the other local bands helping the other local bands. And then I'll see, other people helping. And it's just cool to really bring the positivity, because there's so much negatives in the world and so much, bickering between bands of who's bigger or who's whatever. I mean, we played a show years and years and years ago with the band that didn't even have a record deal yet, named Papa Roach, and they opened up for us. Now they're one of the biggest bands ever. And I mean, we had Suicide Silence opened up for us before they had a record deal, and System of a Down, we played with them. And it's just crazy, because to me, that's worth gold, is all the stories and all the history and all the fun and all the friends we've made and all the places we've been because of music. And I used to kind of get slightly frustrated with record labels, because we almost got signed to Victory Records years ago. And Jamie Josta was like, I don't know. He's all, Victory's a tough label. You guys might be doing better on your own without it. Stay true to your guns, DIY. And then we almost signed to Roadrunner Records, and 9/11 went down, and they didn't want to sign a band that had a song called Nobody Knows What a Killer Looks Like, even though they were flying to all of our shows. And then we almost signed to Nuclear Blast for a minute, and Kerry King called in and even recommended, like, hey, keep an eye out for my friends in Hemlock. And then we almost signed to Prosthetic, and Randy from Lamb of God gave us a good shout out and said, keep an eye out. But we've never had a full traditional signing, but we just keep grinding. And I'm like, you know what? We started this band for the fans and the friends. I'm not going to let the industry side of me really get to me and really burn me out, because that's so many bands have come and gone and broken up or gotten to so much debt. And I'm like, we're going to minimize our overhead. We're going to love to do it, whether it's 30 people or 300 or 3,000. We've done them all. I mean, we still do. We'll tour with Slayer. They'll have 2 nights off. And I'm like, well, we still got to make gas money. So I'll book us a bar show for 80 people the next night. So we'll play for 4,000 people one night, opening for Slayer. We'll drive down to Southern Illinois and go play for 80 people or 100 people or whatever. Do another show over in Kansas City and 200 people, and then jump back up and meet up with Slayer again. And you got another 4,000 people. So I told my dudes in the band years ago, I'm like, it doesn't matter how many people are there. We got to throw down and put on the show of a lifetime every single night, because those 100 people paid for a ticket just like the 3,000 people did, you know? And I've seen some bands before where they'll have like 20 people on stage, and I'm like, or I mean 20 people in the audience, and the band kind of pouts on stage or cuts their set short. I'm like, nope, that's not what Hemlock's about. Because sometimes you might get a bunk rainy night like in Cheyenne, Wyoming on a Tuesday, and it's hard to get people to come out, and we'll get 40 people. And I'm like, we're going to throw down, and these people are going to remember every single part of this, and they're going to be smiling, and they're going to feel like they're part of something. And so I've really been positive and encouraging to our guys over the years to not pout, to not take it for granted. And now it's even a better example, because now everybody that might have taken stuff for granted, a year and a half of no shows or a year of no shows, you know, I'm like, see, I remember that Tuesday night in El Paso, you know, when we played for 90 people or whatever. But then I also remember, you know, playing in Budapest, Hungary for 1,000 people over there with a rad hardcore band named Don Gatto that are some of our best friends now that I never would have met if it wasn't for music. So I always take it back to that I'm like, I'm very grateful and appreciative, even though we're also willing to put in a ton of work. It's definitely not luck. It's just grind after grind. And I joke with people, I'm like, I don't know if I'm too stubborn or what, but I just don't want to quit. I just want to keep going. I love it. I enjoy it. I smile at the end of the day, and we've got awesome friends all around the world because of it.
Awesome, man. I love, it's very inspiring actually, and really punk rock of you. And I was going to just ask you, as we're getting to almost the 30-year mark of the band and your whole career in music, what were the bands originally that made you want to make music or pick up a bass or scream? What was the first thing you heard that made you want to do this stuff?
We always were fans of music, of course, you know, and when we were young, I think it started out, it's a funny story too. It started out with Back to the Future and Huey Lewis and the News and the rock and roll and all that, because me and my brother were real little, and my brother's our drummer. So we kind of got into it. And then my dad took us to go see Skid Row and Bon Jovi in Las Vegas when we were like in junior high. I think I was 6th grade or something. So to see Sebastian Bach come out and just swinging the microphone over his head and screaming and just jumping around, acting like a madman. And then from there, you know, it morphs into Faith No More and into Guns N' Roses. And then before you know it, you're delving into Metallica and Megadeth and Pantera. And then before you know it, you're grinding with Deicide. You know, I mean, it just was like the gateway. So we always considered Huey Lewis and the News our gateway into rock and roll. And we found out that he actually has a place in Montana, and we were on tour in Montana one time. And long story short, my brothers wanted to get Huey Lewis to sign his neck and get a little heart around it, put the power of love. And we kind of halfway stalked, I guess, because some people in Montana that were at our show were like, yeah, I used to clean his house. He lives across the street from Hank Williams too, and whatever. So we drove way out of the way to go try and drop off a couple Hemlock CDs to Huey Lewis. And after we started running low on time, we're like, we're going to be late to our own show. We don't want to be that stalker. We don't want to get shot, you know, but we also wanted to just leave a gift and tell him. My brother wrote a really, really nice note just saying, like, you were the reason why we kind of got into this, you know, and we appreciate your inspiration and whatever. And of course, it's totally different styles. I mean, and but we got to this huge acreage, and we were like, I see the house way out there in the distance. I don't want to get shot by Huey Lewis in the News. Let's just leave this bag of Hemlock goodies on the post right here by the guards keeper's gate. And we left, and we're like, I'm 90% sure that was his house. We're not positive, you know, who knows, but he'll probably just get it and he'll throw it away or whatever. But it's a nice note. So then we went and did our show up in Great Falls, Montana, and we went over to South Dakota. We did a show, and then we were setting up our PA at the next show. And I checked my phone messages, and there was a phone message from Huey Lewis on my phone. I was like, oh, no way, Huey Lewis called. He's all, hey, Hemlock, hey, Brian Smith. Yeah, talking about my brother. He's all, I really appreciated the sweet note. And you could totally tell his smoky voice and everything. And we were like, no way. In the 80s, it was like Michael Jackson, Madonna, Huey Lewis, Prince. I mean, he was up in the up. So we were just so giddy. We're like, no way, we got this voicemail from Huey Lewis saying, I haven't checked out the CDs yet, but I totally will. And you never know, he might be a closet Slayer fan, or, you know, or maybe his kids are into metal or something, you know. But it was just rad. He took the time to call and thank us for the sweet note. And he got the CDs. We left a couple little Hemlock Jaeger shot glasses and stuff. But from there, I mean, it was just funny to go from your very, very early inspiration. And then I think our first national show we ever opened up for, I was probably 16. We got to open up for Fight with Rob Halford. And so Fight was a huge inspiration on us. And I think our second show, the big one, because we were doing all the Elks clubs and all the small bars around Vegas, but we built up enough of a name to where the promoters were offering us these big time gigs as they came through. And I think our second national show, we got to open up for DRI. So we kind of got that early punk rock influence and thrash influence mixed in. And third show that we ever got national wise was Suicidal Tendencies, and just game over after that. I mean, ST, it was just amazing. And these were all in Vegas because we were young. And then after that, I mean, it just kind of morphed to where Biohazard was a huge early influence on us. Propane was, Sepultura. I mean, of course, all the Metallica, the old Megadeth. And in order for me to originally jam with my brother, they told me I had to learn Appetite for Destruction on bass guitar, and I had to learn Ride the Lightning on bass guitar to be in the band. And so I got the gig, maybe because we're brothers, I don't know, but had to learn all that stuff to be in the band. And then we just started playing originals after that. And 28 years later, here we are still doing it.
Not too shabby, brother. Not too shabby. Great stuff. Great stuff. Of course, before we go, I'm going to give you back your evening, but 25 years since the first release this year also. So all these milestones still kicking ass, DIY as hell. And obviously, when you started out 30 years ago almost and made a record 25 years ago, I'm sure you weren't thinking like, oh, 25 years from now, I'm going to have 10, 11, 15 releases and a double album, you know, in any time. It's
yeah,
ridiculous, but
great. Of course, I always wanted to do it for a living, you know, but it's not a very lucrative living. So it's just, it's been fun. And the more we toured, also me and my wife, we decided we needed to move somewhere to where we could afford, because back in the 80s you could get a record deal and you could make enough money to survive and to live off of. And now it seems like, and I've tried explaining this to so many other local bands or regional bands, they're like, how do you guys tour? I said, you have to minimize your overhead so you can afford to do what you love to do. It's vice versa of what it was even in the 80s and even in the early 90s. I mean, we came out the same year as Korn, and we've gotten to open up for them quite a few times. But of course, they've made a really good living off of the music, but they just had whether it was hit songs or better management or just more imagey, I don't know, or whatever. Some of it has to do with the stroke of luck on certain things, you know. But and they are an amazing band, but it's just crazy because we got to the point where we're like, well, we love doing it, you know, whether they're huge tours with Slayer or whether they're small club tours with Poison the Well and Bane. I mean, we want to do them all. So we looked on the internet, anywhere in the United States to live under 60 grand. So it was between Michigan, Iowa, or Oklahoma. And Oklahoma has too many mosquitoes and tornadoes. And place in Michigan, it was rad, but the neighborhood was kind of sketchy. And we're like, all of the gear that we have is worth more than the whole house that it was going to be. And then we played in Battle Creek, Michigan, not too far from where we were looking. So we went and looked at these houses while we were on tour. And this other like motorcycle gang that used to come to the shows were like, we don't even ride through that neighborhood. You guys would be crazy to move there. We're like, well, that's what we can afford. So we opted with Iowa. And plus, because it's centrally located, so me and my wife bought a house in Iowa for $22,000 cash. That way we don't have a house payment. We don't go there very often because we're always on tour, or when it's freezing cold, we come back to Vegas and we work out here and hang out with family and visit with the folks and all that stuff. But we have a home base now, and it makes it to where we can jump on tours easier because we're right centrally located in the middle of the United States. Because being from Vegas, you'd have a 5-hour drive or to LA, or an 8-hour, 9-hour drive to Reno, and you're like, that's still gas money, you know. But when we got out to Connecticut, I'm like, shit, you could drive a half hour and you're in a brand new market. You can go to New York City within an hour. I mean, of course, if traffic's bad, it'll still take you 6 hours, but yeah. So we just minimalized our overhead and we just squashed as many things. We got out of debt. We paid off credit cards, did whatever we could, saved up, bought our own van and trailer to where we didn't have to keep renting all the time. And then the van, after we toured so much and the transmission went out, we wound up buying a 35-foot school bus and converted it into an RV. So now we don't have to get hotel rooms. You just go to Planet Fitness and shower. You get your little workout in the day, you know, and then you sleep in the parking lot of Walmart or whatever. It is like Pirates or punk rockers or whatever. And we've toured with punk bands like Total Chaos and, you know, different bands. But we're just like, it's do or die. You just minimalize your overhead so you can afford to be in a band. And I said, it's so ass backwards, but that's how it works these days. You have to be able to do what you love to do. And who knows, maybe you'll get that song. I mean, we were good friends with Drowning Pool, and then they came out with that song, and just before you know it, they're headlining, or they're like opening main stage instead of headlining small stage or whatever. And it's crazy to see the rise and success of some of these bands that you grew up with. And, you know, System of a Down, they could headline any arena in the world and pack the place. And we played with them when they were selling little cassettes at the table next to us in the Huntridge Theater in Las Vegas. And they got booed off stage because they were too ahead of their time and too, you know, different. But I'm sitting out there with our little Hemlock cassettes. I'm like, I thought you guys were good. It was cool, you know. It's just crazy, all the stories, and I still always look to the future. And I'm like, man, I just love playing music. I love inspiring positivity. I love when people get Hemlock tattoos, they ink it on them for life. There's probably 500 or 600 people out there now with them, and I'm like, that's a diehard right there. They're not just like, oh, I got your shirt and I got your CD, you know. There, I've been following you for 15 years, 20 years, and now I'm bringing my kid to the show, and you know, they're 12 now, and I'm going to bring them to the first metal show, and then their kid gets excited about guitars or drums or whatever and starts a band. And it is just this ever evolving, just madhouse of awesomeness, I guess. That's the best way to put it. I don't know. It's just crazy. It's the whole experience, you know. Even the merch. I love designing all the t-shirts. I actually designed both of our album covers. I did one in Photoshop, and I hand drew the Ganesha elephant on my drawing tablet. And
Wow.
just always been an artist, and I love to do it, and the creation of it all, writing the lyrics. And then there's some of the songs like that are just so deep that people are like, man, that really got me through a rough time in my life. And that's what hardcore and what metal and all that, it just connects with the people a lot more, I think, than whatever pop song or country songs on the radio, which we listen to everything. I love Eddie Money. I mean, we listen to Sade. She's one of my favorite artists, but then I'll also, you know, listen to Dying Fetus and Suffocation or whatever, you know. I mean, I just love all kinds of music. So back in the day, it just, all the way back, it just boils to where we're musician fans, that we love Huey Lewis and News, and we love, you know, anybody, Cephalic Carnage. We've toured with them, Cattle Decapitation, all the heavy of heavies, you know. But then we've also toured with Saliva and Disturbed, all the radio metal bands, Five Finger Death Punch. We're good friends with those guys, you know. It's crazy, all the stories. I start getting rambling and excited, and you're getting me all excited to tour again. Just
Good,
talking
man.
to you.
That's why I'm alive. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
One last thing, because I can't let you go. You mentioned your wife like 3-4 times. Clearly, she's like the secret sauce, the secret weapon of the band. And
Yeah.
obviously, you've been married a while. So how do you make that work? Now, obviously, you've been home for a year and not on the road a lot, and she goes with you. But like, how do you manage to keep the missus happy and tour and make records and work all the time like a maniac?
We used to tour with Soulfly a bunch back in the day, and Gloria was the manager, and they always had their kids and stuff. And long time ago, with my brother being our drummer, we're like, we shouldn't let the band ruin our lives. We should try to make it a family vibe, and we should try to, you know, and make it work and understand, you know. But the more you grind, and when you're gone for 2 or 3 months, it's not everybody's cup of tea. There's some of those times where you're just on tour and you've got such long drives, you might not have time to shower for like sometimes even a week or two. So you just get to the club and you try to do sink baths or whatever, because there's not enough time to even stop at a hotel room. And then when you get there, the big bands have the dressing rooms, and we get a cooler on the loading dock out back, you know, and you're sitting on the coolers. So you're like, all right, sink bath time, guys. And you just get washcloths and try to go up, brush your teeth, and, you know, but actual fresh hot shower. That's why this Planet Fitness thing, when we toured with Head PE a bunch of times, they were like, yeah, you just get gym memberships and you guys go in there and you just stop, you know, and whether you have time to work out or not, but you can all just jump in, take a quick shower. Because when you got a hotel room too, we would usually be all ghetto fabulous and get one room for like the 5 or 6 of us. and a couple of people would sleep on the floor. Somebody would sleep in the van to always keep an eye on the gear. This is back in the day because you didn't want to get your shit jacked in the middle of the night. So we would just take turns rotating, and but then if everybody needs a shower, that's 2 or 3 hours right there. I'm like, sometimes that's the 3 hours you need to get to the next town, to get there in time for load in and sound check and all that, because we don't have a night driver that drives through the night. When we toured with Devil Driver, those drives were so long, and it was just crazy because I was like, all right, I got to drive every single night. After you do a show, after you load out all the gear, you got to wait, clean up all the merch. And then I have to pop an energy drink and just drive till 8 in the morning, see the sun come up, and then wake my wife up because she's sleeping in the bunk in the back. And I'm like, all right, you got to take over from here. And I'll try to get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, get to the club. The guys are usually, when the long drives, they're usually cool about unloading, getting everything in. And they come wake me up. They're like, all right, it's time for sound check. Go in and do it again. And I'm pretty exhausted and beat, but I do it with a smile on my face every single time. So my wife and me, we've been together for 20 years, and she's the only female that has ever been able to put up with a van load, a car load, a bus load of stinky, smelly, sweaty, foul talking dudes. And we've tried taking other guys' girlfriends with us even for a week. They're like, what do you mean? I gotta go pluck my unibrow, or I gotta go change my clothes. We're like, we don't have time. You gotta do, or whatever. I'm not gonna sleep on the floor. And we're like, well, it's your boyfriend's turn. So in all fairness, you gotta keep the rotation going. And we always try looking out for each other, but there is certain traits to people that are road warriors versus just the glamorous touring wise, like the grinders. Psycho Stick is one of the bands that I think that does as many, if not more, shows than Hemlock every year. Head PE is one of them. I know I've mentioned them a few times, where you'll see their tour date come out and it's every single night for like 22 dates, and then they have one night off, and there's still another 25 dates after that. And Mobile Death Camp too. Those guys just grind night after night after night. And a lot of bands, they'll go out and they'll announce their tour, and it'll be like 15 shows, and it's a good tour. I'm not talking bad about it, but I'm talking about the grinders, the ones that essentially live on the road and feel, feed off of it. So it's definitely not for everybody, but my wife's been a trooper all along, and there's been times where I just get so overwhelmed and frustrated. And she said, if you quit, that you're just going to be at home just pissed off and blaming yourself and being that guy that, oh, if I only would have, and she's always been a driving force and helps keep my head on, and helps, she even makes sure we got the gas money to get to the next town, because so many other bands I've seen and that we've played with, they get paid $300 and they go and they buy a bunch of beer and throw a party in the hotel room. I'm like, even when I was 15 years old, I'm like, nope, we got to go buy more stickers and more t-shirts, and we got to get more cassettes ordered. Of course it was the cassette era. I told that to Kerry King one time. I'm like, yeah, Hemlock's old school. We started in the cassette era. He's like, Chad, Slayer started in the 8-track era. I was like, oh, you're right.
You're never going to be the one-up guy that beats Kerry King. However,
it was just,
However, bunch of good stories, man. So good of you to share them all. Congrats to you on 28 years, almost 30 years as a band, 25 years since the first record, 2 brand new albums that are out now, your marriage, the band success, and I love your perspective, and just your positivity is something that's infectious and we could all use a lot more of. So thank you so much, man. Stay in touch, stay healthy, and we'll hopefully see you live.
Pull up in the big black bus, honk the air horn and wave hello to you, jump out, give you a big bro hug, and we'll headbang together. It'll be great.
I can't wait to hug everybody as soon as it's safe. I promise. I'm going to hug everybody. I'm going to buy all the merch. I'm going to drink all the drinks. And
sounds good.
Thanks so much for hanging out with Ghost Cult, man. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.